And we are live on the air. Zilla.
Hooray! Welcome to Suzilla. It is Susie and Matt. This is, Wenatchee Insurance. We are Suzilla. That's the name of our podcast, which you probably figured out if you're listening to us by now. We're over here in Wenatchee. We talk about insurance
And business and
business
family
and family and pretty much whatever comes into our little minds. And one thing we did not do this morning is discuss what we were going to talk about. So I'm coming into this.
We kind of did because
Did
we started talking. You brought up hey, did you hear about this Bridgerton Ball thing?
Oh yeah, the Bridgerton experience. If you haven't heard about that, in Detroit, a company threw a Bridgerton themed. They call it a Bridgerton experience, where you were supposed to be able to go, and it was a ball, and there should have been like an orchestra and entertainment and luxurious food and prizes and dancing, and that's not what happened. If you're at all familiar with the Fyre Festival or the Willy Wonka experience, where it was just a giant freaking disaster, that's exactly what happened here.
Well, we're seeing that repeat over and over again. Now, someone will glom on to a brand like Bridgerton or Wonka,
something that's trendy,
or even marketing like using influencers with Fyre
Festival, which is Fyre Festival Mark II is coming. Go figure that one.
And they will use that to a delivery system to extract wealth.
Unfortunately, they're extracting wealth from people who are not wealthy.
Well, some are wealthy, some are not. I mean, I saw the Fyre Festival too, and they have some of their packages are like $1.4 million.
Okay, well that's Fyre Festival. The Fyre Festival was really definitely aimed at people who had wealth. There's no question about that, because you couldn't get into it unless you were,
$1,000 and flying in.
Yeah, I mean it was not a cheap process. The Willy Wonka experience was less so, and then the Bridgerton experience, I think you could pay upwards of $1,500 for the full experience, but you could pay as little as like $100 and still go and hang out at the dance.
Well, some of it has to do with there are a couple different factors coming in it. One is the very entrepreneurial spirit of, hey, let's do something. And they're kind of using a kind of a crowdsourced fuel.
Yes.
And they're not utilizing it once they hit things. It's like, oh yeah, I've got 100 people in. I need to make sure I've got 100 plates.
Mm-hmm. It's one of the things that this last one happened in Detroit. They ran out of food.
And you mentioned raw chicken.
Yeah, and the chicken was undercooked. And it was, someone described it as the plate you get when your boyfriend makes you dinner. Not a good boyfriend.
Okay.
Yeah. It was like it was like a chicken wing and one meatball and some weird looking, pasta thing and some green beans.
So that brings us to the first point.
It wasn't even a coherent plate.
Okay. So the first point is, where is the funding for these events coming from?
Exactly.
Do they have the cash on hand?
Or are they building it from the money that's coming in? Which is a losing proposition.
Not necessarily. I've done those before,
and that can be really difficult if you don't get enough people.
Yeah, well, you have to you scale.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense. You build it based on the number of people coming.
It's, for example, you have a big blowout. You've rented a room and you have a speaking arrangement. Actually, you saw this with a bunch of the early on Trump events.
Mm-hmm.
Pack the stadium or the speaking venue, and so you set up jumbotrons in the parking lot.
Yeah,
that's an example of scaling.
Right, you're taking the next step.
You're taking the next steps to make sure that you can accommodate this massive amounts of people.
Right. And that's fine.
Yes. However, if you are someone who, if you start to see, oh well, there's no scaling occurring,
you got to scale back.
Well, no. that's a sure sign if you're an audience member or seeking to participant
Mm-hmm.
that the event is not a good one. If there's no ability to scale, if there's no limitations being applied, you know that you're in for it's a wealth extraction situation.
Yeah. Could be, and that's very scammy.
It is very scammy, but at the same time, as a performer, you need to be able to recognize, oh my gosh, I'm getting into a scam here. I need to get out.
Oh, if you're performing at this,
if you're performing, or if you're, if you're being hired to serve, and it's like, okay, cool, this looks like an awesome event, and lo and behold, you're the only Wonka serving drinks, the only.
You're the only Oompa Loompa in the room.
And you're the saddest Oompa Loompa that will be known forever.
Yeah, you're probably in a bad situation. Hopefully you got paid up front.
Yeah, and that's one of those things. It's like, some of these scams, they hire performers or service personnel that's their career, is to provide good service or good entertainment, and they're damaging those people's reputations.
That's true. I mean, in this Bridgerton situation, we know the catering servers were probably damaged from that.
Mm-hmm.
We also know that instead of having even a trio, a string quartet or something, they had one violinist, which I'm sure she did the best she could. But that's really hard for one person to, carry an entire rooms full of, entertainment. And their live entertainment, bless her heart, was a woman on a stripper pole in a bikini.
Mm-hmm.
They had a stripper. That's not very...
It doesn't seem very appropriate.
Not very period appropriate, no.
But as soon as you said, Bridgerton, and it's like, high society stuff. Oh, so they hired a quartet. No.
Well, they might. Well, they said they were going to have like an orchestra kind of situation, but they didn't even get a full quartet. They got one gal with a violin. It sounds like things they made a lot of promises that it either fell apart or they never intended to fulfill them in the first place.
Well, it brings me to the next question. It was the next question I had for Susie.
Mm-hmm.
Was the organizers on site?
That I would hope, but I don't know. I'm just taking a look here.
Because that's one of those important questions you have, and you get that when you deal with rental properties.
Well, one of the things I did notice about, I think if I recall, I saw on the company's website that they had to change venues, but even so, that should not have been because of weather and stuff, and permitting, but it all kind of fell apart,
Well, it's one of those things. It's like, okay, if you're renting a facility, is the owner on site?
Yep.
Or
is the organizer on site? Yeah.
Or are you just you're slipping a check in the mailbox? And then that's a really important question, because it shows the disconnect with responsibility.
Oh, here we go. 7 News Detroit showed up to the venue to see if anyone from the LLC would be there cleaning up the event, but no luck. There was nobody at the event after the event to do cleanup.
Yeah.
So they may not have been there in the first place. The news has contacted the company, and they have released they have not contacted back to the news agencies. There is a statement, though. They said that organizational challenges affected the enjoyment of some guests. We're working diligently to address all concerns to ensure all the guests have the enjoyable experience they deserve. We're reviewing resolution options, which will be communicated shortly. I have a sneaking hunch there's going to be some refunds happening, but they're still probably going to come out. I mean, if this was an intentional disaster, which could be, then they're probably still going to come out ahead.
But yeah, it really depends on the form. But there's like I said, there are signs going into one of these events
Mm-hmm.
that it's not going to be a good event.
Yeah.
One of the things that for crowdsourcing that you've got to pay attention to, and it's one of my check boxes, is do I know the organizer and do they have a reputation?
Mm-hmm. That's a good question. You've got it. Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, have they had a good experience? Have they had good experiences before? Have they thrown good parties before? Now that being said, sometimes you got to give a new company a chance.
Well, yes, you got to give new check, but this is for, like I said, crowdsourced venues.
Yeah.
A really good example of that was Angry Kittens and the Bears
Oh
game
yeah.
that we got.
Yeah.
That is a really excellent example. What they did was they took a idea, cartooning format, and just slowly started scaling it into these games.
Yeah.
Events are the same way. It's like, okay, who is the backer of this? What is their reputation? If it's, hey, I've never heard of this LLC, maybe not.
Yeah.
Then the next thing is what, are they on site
Uh-huh.
or are they off site?
Exactly.
If they're on site, that's a good sign. And then the next thing is what is their goal?
Mm-hmm. That's why I'm looking up the LLC that threw this thing.
Yeah.
Never mind. I'm done now.
What is their goal? Because we do a lot of different events for different outfits, and the motivation becomes really muddy. And I say that because we've gone to some really excellent events where it's like, hey, this event is to inform.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And some really excellent cross-sharing of information and policy, and it becomes this excellent resource that people look forward to, and it becomes a really dynamic learning experience.
Yeah, and we love being part of those.
Then there are others where it's kind of more of it's not done with that intent. It's like, oh my gosh, I'm here collecting a paycheck for an organization.
Yeah, we run into people who are of that attitude. We do a lot of events where we table, what's called tabling.
Yeah.
We go there, we set up our stuff, we wave at people and say, hey, how's it going? And tell them about what we do. And we're always been very engaging. We always engage folks. What we have seen is that sometimes you've got, partly because we're the business owner.
Yeah.
Sometimes what you find is you've got the boss deploying one of the employees to go man the table, and they don't want to be there, or they're there for their shift, and it's like, okay, I'm getting paid. I'm just going to sit on my ass and play on my phone.
Well, it's not always just playing with the phone. It's just the I'm trapped here.
That I'm trapped here feeling, yeah, giving off the vibes.
Yeah, and if you're running an event and your people, or the people that you are hoping to empower your event to greater heights, have the feeling of being trapped there, you shouldn't have them there.
Yeah, exactly. You should never, because it really chills the room. Because if the people who are supposed to be driving the energy forward are not, it can ruin it for everybody.
Well, it was a couple 4th of Julys ago where we went and we wanted to make a presence and talk about the Apple Health unwinding,
right? Which is a big deal.
Which is still a big deal. Still a big deal. But it was one of those things, and the event was supposed to be a big celebration for the 4th of July.
Right, it's supposed to be a community event.
And the coordinator decided that because it was their last hurrah, that they would get a preaching group up on stage.
Yeah, and not a gentle, honest, gentle. Let's just.
It was not celebratory at all. It was a preach at sort of thing,
Yeah.
and it was just like it chilled the sales, it chilled the event, and it was just made it was nightmare, and you felt trapped, and that was the point where about half the vendors packed up their stuff,
including us.
Yeah, because if we knew that was the sort of thing that was acceptable,
we would have never gone in the first place.
Yeah.
No, that was an absolutely that was an absolute event killer. It really was. Mm-hmm. And the folks that threw this were thrilled that they were there, Mm-hmm. It was not a very friendly, patriotic kind of situation, It wasn't very community. Mm-hmm. It wasn't inclusive to the community.
So that's one of the things that you got to look. So you want the people that don't feel trapped, that aren't given that trap vibes, mm-hmm. and you don't want the people that are trapping people.
Yeah, exactly. You don't want people that are trapping people. You want everyone to feel happy and having a good time.
Happy, inclusive. And when I say trapping is it was a con over in England or Scotland. It was one of the Great British Isles, and they had a performer from the boys mm-hmm. that a guest decided to act very inappropriately to them,
super inappropriately towards them,
to the point where that guest, that professional, had to speak out about that being treated that way. Mm-hmm. And it's like, it didn't make any sense that the organizers didn't shut that down immediately and mm-hmm. made sure that their professional was taken care of.
Well, it's not just, yes, but it's important that the professionals feel safe. Uh-huh. But if you've got a guest being assaulted by a fan, verbally, physically, whatever, mm-hmm. it was ugly. It was a really mm-hmm. unpleasant experience. And what are they doing to protect their other fans, the other people who mm-hmm. that are not the professionals? What are they doing to protect the people that are there to have a good time and meet they're the fans to meet the performers? Because if you've got one guy who's got the cojones to go after one of the performers mm-hmm. and behave that way, what's he doing to somebody who's just some gal who wanted to dress up in a costume and just have a good time? What would he do to that person? Mm-hmm. That's not acceptable, and that is something that's super important for the organizers to be extremely cognizant of mm-hmm. in every situation.
So yeah, you got to be protective of your guests, who you invite, your performers, mm-hmm. Your staff.
Yeah.
And when you start to see that, these events, it's like they go from a event, a well done event, to, oh my gosh, this is a scam to rip off some people. Mm-hmm. You start to see those protections go away.
Yeah, that's one of the first things that goes away is security.
Yeah, well, yeah. It's not security. Security is one of those. It's really a garbage term.
Okay.
Because the best security you don't see. Mm-hmm. It's invisible until it's needed.
Right. It's a whole roadhouse situation.
Well, no, it's one of those things that is really a lot of feelings, because there are people who will never feel secure.
Oh yeah.
Just point blank.
Because
they will never feel secure.
It is in their
for whatever
makeup
reason.
It's in their makeup for whatever reason that they're not going to feel secure in a situation.
And then there are other people who will go down, dark alleys and not think twice. Mm-hmm. So security is one of those things that's it's not really measurable. However, having those safeguards in place that if something starts going wrong, you can address it. It's exactly. That flexibility.
Exactly. And address it immediately in an appropriate manner.
And you can only do that if you're on site. Mm-hmm. Or if you've got key people on site.
Exactly.
And that's where you start to see, it's like, okay, where's the key people? And now these events can be taken and done anywhere mm-hmm. at any size and scaled up. Whether it's, oh my gosh, I've got a small dinner party of 10. Mm-hmm. To, oh my gosh, I've got a festival of 2,000.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and if you don't have an organizer on site, something's really wrong.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's really simple. You cannot throw an event and have it be a set it and forget it. It just doesn't happen.
Well, we're seeing that more and more.
Really?
I think we are. I think it's like I said. I think it's a cash grab.
Yeah.
That people, oh hey, it looks effortless. Let's throw on a show.
Oh, they're thinking that, oh hey, I can do this. I saw one of these. Let's do one of those, but they don't know how to do it, so they just wing it and they fail miserably.
Well,
or they say, okay, let's do this on the cheap, and see how much we can get out of it.
That's the second one. It's not the, hey, let's put on a show. You know, there's no love in it.
Mm-hmm.
It's, hey, let's put on a show. Let's make lots of money.
Yeah, let's do it as cheap as we can, and see how much we can squeeze out of the people who want to come do this.
Yeah,
and that's the cash grab. That's the scam.
And that is the cash grab. And you see that replicated over and over again. Mm-hmm. By people who create bad experiences.
Well, yeah. And the thing is, it's not only the people who are attending, but mm-hmm. also if it's like a convention situation or a festival where you've got vendors, the vendors are getting ripped off too.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Because they have to pay to be there. Vendors have to pay booth fees to purvey their wares.
Oh, some of them are shockingly expensive.
Oh, I know, it's ridiculous.
We did one that we were, a couple years ago that, we sponsored a radio station, mm-hmm. and lo and behold, the day one, I don't think did any of the DJs ever stop by our booth for that entire weekend?
The second time or the first time?
The second time.
Second time, no.
Yeah.
First time, yes. Second time, no.
So yeah, so this first time they did pretty good. We got DJs. It was a good time. Second time around, it was zero interaction with the DJs, despite us sponsoring their booth.
Yeah, throwing it.
So it became this cash grab.
And we felt ripped off.
And we felt ripped off. And then when we start to look at some of these other festivals, and you just like, oh, hey, you want 25% of the gross receipts.
Mm-hmm. The gross receipts, not the net.
Not the net. Gross. We're talking gross receipts. And it's like, well, this explains why there's not anybody new. Uh-huh. It's because it's become this cash grab for this organization, and you can't find enough cash, and you got to go through that learning curve. Well, yeah. There's no way to adjust. It's like, okay, yeah, we're going to do this. What if we get hit with 2,000 people looking for hot dogs? Mm-hmm. Where do we get 2,000 hot dogs?
Mm-hmm. Well, and one of the things that I think would be smart for some of these organizations that are creating, if it's a legitimate mm-hmm. situation and they're just kind of struggling to get new blood in, mm-hmm. maybe have a tiered situation. This is a small business that only brings in X number of dollars. You're shaking your head.
I'm shaking my head at that, and the reason why I'm shaking that head at is because business has been so pushed aside. Mm-hmm. People will segregate. Well, hey, this is a business. This is a nonprofit. I've seen nonprofits with richer, meaner pockets than small businesses.
Well, yeah, absolutely.
However, it's not being treated that way.
Okay.
It's treated, they're a nonprofit, therefore, hey, they need to get in for cheap.
Well, no, I'm not talking nonprofits here.
No, I'm talking.
Well, you're saying that the nonprofits would take advantage.
I'm saying that nonprofits are taking advantage, and they have this weird gatekeeping clause mm-hmm. that have been put into play of, hey, we're only going to do nonprofits that help the community. Well, what happens if you've got just a group that is feeding the homeless? Mm-hmm. They don't have a nonprofit status.
They're just a useful group.
They're just groups, so therefore they get upcharged.
Yeah,
and we see that model time and time again.
Well, what I'm thinking of is our local festival. Right, mm-hmm. We have a festival every year. Big.
We got a couple different festivals.
Yeah, well, this is one of the big ones, and we always have one thing you're going to run into is the craft fair.
Mhm.
You've got, if they're asking, now I'm just speculating because I don't really know the
Yeah.
numbers, but if they want 25% of the gross for a vendor on top of the initial
Gate
fee, right, to be part of this,
Yeah.
right? And you're, Jane the soap maker, you're going to end up in the red.
Yeah.
But if you are, giant, elephant ear creator that's been there and does this for, every year constantly and makes, hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, it's less of a deal. So how do these legitimate situations, these legitimate festivals and things like that, how do they encourage these small soap makers? How do they keep these, and get some variety in their festivals? Because one thing you pointed out, you see the same groups year after year after year after year and you don't get any new blood in there because the new small businesses can't afford to shell out, $1,000 for the weekend and then give up a quarter of everything they make, but more than a quarter of everything they make.
Well, you're also seeing similar aspects in the small farmers markets and the makers markets.
Exactly.
And
similar situation. How do you encourage that?
Or even swap meets.
Mm-hmm.
And what is occurring is they're not doing it for the love of the event. They're not doing it for the love of the audience. They're not even doing it necessarily for the love of the creation.
They're doing the love of the dollar.
Their love of the dollar.
No.
And that's just the nature. So you've got to find the folks that are in the love of it and encourage them.
Because they do exist.
Oh,
yeah.
And that is just critical because the ones that do love it, the ones that do make the event special, they're the ones that will show up on social media to spread your event. They're the ones that will use social media to spread your event.
They won't, and will do it without asking for anything else.
Yes. And at the same time, you want to encourage that.
Yes.
And that grows their audience and grows your audience. It becomes you're growing something.
Mm-hmm.
It's not extracting, you're growing.
Right. And it's a community effort. And community is really what a lot of these are about,
Yeah, because
they're supposed to be.
Yeah, because more than once we've done events and we've invited people because it was a community event, and we would go out of our way to make sure that they were welcomed and invited because they were special.
Mm-hmm.
And that's on how we made events special.
Mm-hmm.
And that formula can be done, like I said, any event, any scalable.
Mm-hmm.
You do your dinner party of 10, you bring in a cheesecake from a local baker that knocks everyone's socks off.
Mm-hmm.
That's a simple way of bringing something in special that creates memories.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because you love to do it. It's not like, oh my gosh, I'm going to charge everyone $8 for the slice of cheesecake. And that is it. It's like, where's the focus? Is it the love of the event, of the people, of the community, or is it love of the dollar?
There you go. And that's what you need to investigate if you are either looking to go to one of these events, if you're looking to work at one of these events, if you're looking to participate in one of these events. Look at your organizer, see where their heart is.
Yeah, and then when it'll start to come out pretty quick if you walk in and it's like, oh my gosh, here is a plain cheese sandwich and a bottle of water.
If you walked in at that point, it's too late.
Yeah.
You need to figure it out beforehand. And unfortunately, if you're going to be attending, sometimes you don't know because the promises are made and you're hoping for the best.
Well, that's that get to know people.
Yeah.
And then when you start looking around, it's like, okay, well, who else is here? I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Who else is tabling?
Mm-hmm.
Is there anyone familiar?
Well, see, that's where you're dealing with events, whereas I'm dealing with like an individual thing like this Bridgerton experience where you don't have that. You can't look at the other people. You can know what they should have had, what could have, if they'd had, okay, this This string quartet will be performing. These, this
is who the caterer is.
Then that would have been a solid. That would have been a solid indicator that this is going to be an event that's going to work.
Mm-hmm.
They just said, no, this is going to happen. You should come and spend, $300 on your ticket. And we promise this will happen. This
is the photographer.
Mm-hmm.
You can set up those experiences
mm-hmm.
so that you've got some safe porting and some buy-ins. That definitely becomes, because I know that we had a Edgar Allan Poe experience.
Yeah, and I heard good things.
I heard some good things. I heard some bad things.
Mm-hmm.
One of the, I did a little bit of digging on it
mm-hmm.
because I was like, okay, that sounds like a cool event, because that sounds like something that I would have done back in the day.
And that's a traveling event. That was one that goes from town to town to throw this thing.
Yeah, it goes from town to town, and they are pretty successful in doing it. They also, need to revise some things.
Mm-hmm.
One of the biggest fallouts was they didn't have a non-alcoholic version.
Yeah, they didn't. Yeah, they didn't have a. They didn't have any mocktails.
That was readily available.
Right. It had to be. It was being gatekept. All right, we're out of time.
Okay, so hey, think about when you do your events, or when you participate in events, where it is at. Because if someone is just doing a money grab, the experience is never worth it.
No, it never is. All right, good place to end. Have a great day. We'll talk to you next week.
All right, bye.
Bye.